In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Hello, and welcome back to the Layman Confessor Podcast. My name is Justin. I'm your host, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you for joining me. Today is January 20th, 2025, which means that among many things, it is Inauguration Day here in the United States. Which means a couple of things. First of all, it means you're probably watching this at a later date. Second, it means that this is a feast day of Saint Sebastian, which is actually a significant day in church history. And one of these days, we're going to go through a number of significant reasons why I think it's really helpful for us as Christians, particularly as modern Christians here in the West, to reassess the church calendar and to look at some ways that it can help us both in our personal piety and our relationships with the Lord, as well as with the way that we interact with our neighbors and other churchmen around us. But today, I want to follow up with our last two podcasts where we looked at the lives of Saint Boniface and Saint Benedict. All right, we were exploring their lives, the wisdom that they offered, and the ways that their stories could resonate with our lives today. Today, we're diving into the lives of both of them just a little bit. And along the way, we're going to be looking at C.S. Lewis, some of the wisdom he gives us, particularly in his book, The Horse and His Boy, a little bit of J.R. Tolkien and G.K. Chesterton, and even perhaps looking a little bit at some lyrics from Led Zeppelin, right? So we're going to be journeying together to uncover what we can learn from both of those saints, because we sort of, I don't want to say we pitted them against each other. We certainly didn't do that. And so much of what they did works so well in conjunction with the other one. But I just want to briefly review what their lives were like and some of the lessons that we can learn from the two of them, right? So first of all, let's relook at Saint Boniface, this bold evangelist. So Saint Boniface, as you'll remember, he was a man of action. He was born in England. His birth name was Winfrid. His calling took him far from home, deep into the forests of Germany, where he boldly preached the gospel to pagan tribes. One of his most famous acts, of course, was the felling of Thor's oak, a sacred tree to the Germanic people. Boniface's courage in this act was not merely destructive, it was transformative. He used the wood to build a chapel, symbolizing the triumph of the Christian God over the fear of the pagan gods. Right? Boniface's life echoes the themes that we see in Ballad of the White Horse, where King Alfred faces the daunting task of preserving Christian culture against invading forces. Both Boniface and Alfred understood that courage is not the absence of fear, but the resolve to act despite it. Like the heroic characters in these stories, both of them true, Boniface reminds us that faith requires boldness and the willingness to challenge the status quo. Somewhat in contrast, Saint Benedict's life was marked by a quieter but no less impactful form of heroism. Born into a noble Roman family, Benedict rejected the chaos and decadence of his time in order to establish a new way of life centered on prayer, work, and community. His rule of Saint Benedict became the foundation for Western monasticism, emphasizing balance, humility, and discipline. We looked at some of those in that episode. Benedict's vision parallels Frodo's journey in a number of ways in The Lord of the Rings. Just as Frodo's quest required endurance and the support of a fellowship, Benedict's monastic life thrived on community and perseverance. And both of these teach us that greatness often lies in the small, faithful acts of daily life. Now let's compare the two of these for just a moment. Now, while Boniface was a trailblazer, challenging hostile environments, Benedict focused on building enduring structures, both literal and spiritual. One was the bold missionary, the other the wise architect of a new social order. And together, they embody the dual call to transform the world through action and sustain it through discipline and wisdom. This duality brings to mind Shasta and Erebus from The Horse and His Boy. At least it did to me. Shasta's boldness and Erebus's thoughtful determination complement each other, much like the lives of Boniface and Benedict. Both saints' stories remind us that the Christian life requires both courage and stability. Now, I want you to consider the life of Saint Sebastian. This may be a saint you haven't heard of before. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, today, January 20th, is his feast day. Saint Sebastian was a Roman soldier and a martyr. He embodies Boniface's boldness and Benedict's discipline. Like Boniface, he stood firm in his faith despite persecution, and like Benedict, his life was marked by an unwavering commitment to a higher calling. Sebastian becomes a bridge between the lessons of these two saints, showing us that courage and discipline are not opposing virtues, but harmonious strengths. If you want to learn more about Saint Sebastian, let me know in the comments below. This is certainly a man whose life I have desired to emulate, and one that I would love to talk to you more about. There are a lot of lessons from his life, and a lot of really beautiful aspects that I think we can learn from, and deserve to be talked about more than just this brief overview that I've given you here. So let me look at a handful of practical takeaways for us, though. What can we learn from these saints for our modern lives? First of all, I think we can look at courage in the face of fear, right? Standing firm in our beliefs, even when it's difficult. Looking at the lives of Saint Boniface, we see that difficulty being physical threats, right? Other human beings wanting to take his life for ideological reasons. For Saint Benedict, the challenges of putting yourself through something like a long-term fast or waking up at various hours throughout the night in order to pray. These are both difficulties that I think we would today find very challenging. Second, transforming these obstacles into opportunities, right? Like Thor's oak, let challenges become instruments for growth to some extent, right? Thirdly, being a voice for truth. In a world of confusion, clarity and truth are gifts. And one of the benefits to living out a Christian worldview, or walking with a Christian worldview, is the fact that we are able to see the world for what it is. We don't have to pretend that things came from a certain place in order to support an ideology. We don't have to pretend that men can be women and women can be men in order to go alongside a certain kind of ideology, twisted and broken as it is. Right? We're able to look at the world for what it is. But that also calls us to speaking that truth, to living in light of that truth, which puts us at odds, which again brings us back to that first point from of a lesson that we learned from Saint Boniface, and that is courage in the face of fear. So from Saint Boniface, we get the lessons of courage in the face of fear, looking to transform the obstacles that we're working through into opportunities, and then being a voice of truth. From Saint Benedict, I think we also have 3 lessons. First, embracing balance. Learning to integrate prayer, work, and rest into our lives is a very important thing for us as Christians. A lot of ink has been spilt, and a lot of podcasts have been recorded and played on the subject of work-life balance. And that was a really popular idea for a long time. And now, if you follow these sorts of things, you're seeing a lot of people reject the idea of a life-work balance, that it's got to be something else in between. As I'm going to talk about in a couple of weeks, I think for us as Christians, if we're wanting to pursue this idea, we're going to need to take a step back into what's called the liturgical calendar and look to it for guidance. More on that in a future episode. So first lesson from Saint Benedict then is embracing balance. Second lesson, I think, is focusing on community, right? Surrounding ourselves with people who support and challenge us to growth. We are called into community. We're created for community, right? We can't do it on our own. Benedict learned this very quickly. He couldn't physically survive on his own. Even when he was living as a hermit for that little amount of time, there was another priest living somewhere on the mountain or cliff above him. Not real clear on how exactly that worked, but that priest or that other hermit or whoever he was lowering bread down to Benedict, right? So Benedict, that is, couldn't survive without this other person. Emotionally, we can't survive without other people either. Spiritually, we cannot survive without other people. Christ has given us his church, his body, right? When we are saved, we are not just saved out of something, but we are saved into something. We are brought into this community, this body, this church that is Christ's bride. And that's a collective reality that I think it's difficult for us to really grasp, at least here in the American West. Perhaps we can look more into that as well. So the first lesson from Saint Benedict was embracing balance. Second was focusing on community. But third, pursuing discipleship. We need to build habits that sustain our spiritual and our personal well-being. And this is something I want to spend some time looking into a little deeper in our next few episodes as we look at the church calendar, that is the liturgical calendar, and the rhythms that we gain from that. But this is one other thing that we can learn by a really good study of the life of Saint Benedict. Now, from Saint Sebastian, we get three more. Again, Saint Sebastian I see as sort of a wedding or a marrying between these other two saints. First of all, combining boldness with discipline. We need to be courageous, but we also need to be grounded. Charge the Light Brigade is a very inspiring poem, right? Inspiring ballad. However, anyone with any sort of tactical understanding recognizes that what took place at the event that inspired that was foolish, right? Absolutely overly bold, entirely unnecessary, and 100% avoidable, right? So we need to be courageous, just like those men in the Light Brigade. But we also need to be grounded and rooted into the reality, right? Like George Washington was, right? He was bold enough to know when to fight and when to withdraw. Interesting. Second, enduring with faith, right? Learning to persevere in trials and trusting in God's plan. I actually have a curriculum that I'm hoping to publish here in a couple of months. It's going to look at how to endure in our faith, not more easily. That's not the right word. That's not at all endurance. But I'm hoping that it's a tool that will help you learn to endure in your faith. And thirdly, inspiring others, right? Letting our lives be a testament to the hope and resilience. St. Paul has so much to say on this, as does St. Peter, particularly in his first epistle, right? So just some closing thoughts. Learning from the saints is good and beautiful because it connects us to a larger story, a story that we as Christians all share together. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, but the blood of the martyrs also runs through our veins as Christians, right? Right? And this story, this larger story, is one of faith, hope, and love. And I regret now saying that a little bit. It's true, but I see those signs in Hobby Lobby or in people's kitchen, right? But it's true, right? We do inherit faith and hope in this love, right? The lives of these saints inspires us to strive for holiness while reminding us that we are a part of a community spanning centuries. Which reminds me a little bit of the Led Zeppelin riff that builds into this beautiful crescendo, right? In so many of their songs, right? Their stories energize and they elevate us, right? The Battle of Nevermore. Right, calling us to live with purpose and to passion. So, my dear friends, as you go about your week, think of the boldness of Boniface, the wisdom of Benedict, and the harmony of Sebastian. right? Let their lives inspire you in the light, that are to be the light of the world. And until next time, friends, stand strong for what you believe to be right and hold fast to what you know to be true.